everyone. So I would like to welcome you all to this second webinar on the series of webinars we have organized on generative artificial intelligence in higher education and teacher education from the Center for Education Technology and Media, SETME, in collaboration with the Faculty of Education of the Open University of Sri Lanka. So today, our second webinar is on creative integration of generative AI in teaching and learning. So I would like to welcome you all to this webinar, and especially I would like to welcome our presenter, Professor Chrissy Neransi from the UK. So first of all, let me introduce to you Professor Chrissy. Dr. Chrissy Neransi is a professor in creative and open education in the School of Education at the University of Leeds in the United Kingdom. She is also a senior lead of the Knowledge Equity Network and the academic lead for Discover and Explore at the University of Leeds. Her innovative contributions, such as cross-boundary learning and open professional development, foster collaborative, creative, and inclusive education. A National Teaching Fellow and multi-award winning educator, as well as a prolific researcher, Chrissy integrates creativity, playfulness, and openness to inspire transformative learning experiences across disciplines and communities. She is an internationally recognized leader in creative and open education, with a career spanning roles as a teacher, programmer, translator, academic developer, and education innovator in several countries such as Greece, Slovenia, Germany, and the UK. Chrissy is a Georgian alumna, the founder of the International Open Creative Higher Education Community, and she has co-created many open educational resources, OER, and initiated a range of further open professional development courses, networks, and communities that have been sustained over the years. Recently, the open crowdsourced generative AI collection, a project that she leads, won the Open Education Award for Excellence in the category of Open Curation Repository by Open Education Global. So we are very pleased to have you here today, Chrissy, and I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting and a creative presentation today. So I would like to invite all the participants to listen to the webinar presentation, and if you have any queries, please type in the chat box so that at the end of the webinar, Chrissy can address them. Thank you very much for everyone for participating, and thank you, Chrissy. And now I hand over to you to commence the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica, for this kind invitation. And it's lovely to see so many colleagues here today. And I'm very much looking forward to sharing some of my insights around generative AI and how I have used it with you. We are going to upload a presentation, and we are going to use this as a trigger for conversation. As Veronica said, any thoughts, ideas, and practices perhaps you have been exploring and experimenting with, I would be delighted to hear in the chat, and then at the end also to discuss. So today we are going to look, as Veronica said, around creative integration of generative AI in teaching and learning in the higher education context. I'm trying to move. Okay, this is a quick reminder for all of us, which I found this quote very, very powerful from Bell Hooks. The classroom remains the most radical space of possibility in the academy. And that's something that may be sometimes forgotten. We see research as something that we do where we experiment and explore and gain new insights. But equally, the classroom can play a vital role in making new discoveries and identifying new and novel connections that bring new insights and new knowledge to all of us. And it is about working with our students in that space. So today what we are going to do is I'm going to provide a brief introduction and framing for the session, and I'm going to share with you 3 applications of generative AI from an educator perspective and 3 from a student perspective. All these examples are my own, and there are many, many others, and I will provide links and resources that you can access to further engage with some of these. And at the end, there will be food for thought, so further ideas. So let's move to the introduction and the framing of the session. As Veronica said, I'm based in the UK. I had a varied career so far, and who knows what the future may bring. I was born in Germany, but I'm Greek. You see the Acropolis there in Athens. I have been in the Navy and a translator for many years. I have a family, my 2 boys. You can see me. Tiny Chrissy there in red with my boys. At the bottom on the right, you see the University of Leeds. On the left, where I was a child in Germany, smiling and happy. And with the Greek flag, there is actually the university I did my undergraduate degree on, the beautiful island of Corfu. But most importantly, I am actually a very experimental and curious learner, and that's primarily how I see myself. I very much enjoy being playful, creative, and use my curiosity to learn new things. So the University of Leeds, where I work for the last 2.5 years, is a big Russell Group institution, research intensive, with over 40,000 students and 10,000 members of staff. While it is research intensive, there's also the ambition to transform what we call student education or teaching and learning, if you like, across the institution. And there's ambitious project currently, a 10-year project currently running at the institution, Curriculum Redefined, which has the ambition to transform learning and teaching into something that is flexible, inclusive, and transformative. And creativity plays obviously a vital role in this. And at the bottom, I added briefly here the mission of the university, and it is all about collaborating with others, sharing that, harnessing that expertise in research and education, like I said, to transform lives and shape a better future for local communities, but also globally. So our social mission is really important for the institution. On the right-hand side, you see one of the symbolic buildings of the university, the Parkinson Building. And I thought, well, we are based in Leeds. I don't know if you have heard of Marks and Spencer's in the UK and in Europe. At least it's one of the big brands. It actually started in Leeds by immigrants who came from Belarus, and that was Michael Marks, who went to the market in Leeds in 1894. So many years ago, and that was the beginning of a global brand now. Leeds and the Yorkshire area is famous for the Yorkshire tea in the UK. We very much enjoy it. We obviously don't grow it in the UK, but Yorkshire tea is something that is a very well-known brand, so also from the area of Leeds. And we have the Bronte sisters as well. Now, this is moving here quicker than I want. I haven't actually touched anything. How can I go back briefly? Here we are. And the Bronte sisters from literature, you may have heard Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre and other works of art that came from Haworth, which is not so far from Leeds. Okay, so let's move. So my happy place, I thought, okay, this is about generative AI. And I thought, let's go to generative AI, give it a prompt there and see what it comes up with. And I think that's pretty close to where I would love to be right now, I think, as well. So it gave me very, very quickly, and that is with Copilot, based on a prompt where I said, I want a little house with olive trees and tomatoes and lemons hanging from the tree near the sea on a little hill with one boat in the sea, but obviously it didn't listen. So it planted a few more boats that I wanted, and it's quite commercial. If you zoom in, you will see there are many people down there. So while it's not perfect, it's pretty close to how I envisage myself of being in a place where that makes me happy. So I wanted to share that with you, also to trigger maybe something you could do in the future, maybe with students, with colleagues, for yourself to reflect. While I didn't do it to create something artistic, but it's something to visualize my thoughts, my ideas, and this provided a really useful and quick tool that can also be used for conversations. So in the chat, Veronica kindly invited you at the beginning. I would be delighted to hear a little bit about how you feel about generative AI. What has been good? What has been a challenge? What is frustrating sometimes? Sometimes we lose a lot of time and we think, oh, I could have done it quicker maybe without generative AI. I would love to hear some of the examples and your thoughts. So please add them to the chat and we can pick that up later. Thank you. So moving forward, this is a very interesting report, very fresh. If you haven't accessed this, you will get access to all the links and you can read and digest what it says. But here, this is a future of jobs report from the World Economic Forum, and it highlights many interesting things of what's coming and what will be essential skills and capabilities in the future and in the now also, because we experienced it already in the last 2.5 years. And while you see AI at the very top there as a very vital skill, and that's why we are also here, creativity features and creative thinking features very highly there as well. So something to be mindful of. This is not about handing everything over the plate to AI and AI will do everything for us. There's nothing that can replace human creativity and our ingenuity and an imagination that only we have as human beings. So we need to be mindful of this, be mindful when we are teaching, be mindful when we work with our students, be mindful when we learn. Thank you. And you may have seen there are a number of frameworks. This is one here on AI competencies, particularly on the future skills by Ehlers and colleagues in Europe. And I've just highlighted 3 points there on again, creative problem solving features very strongly, the self-determined action to actually do something as a human being, but also work together in collaboration. These are really important things. I have a raised hand here from Anuradha. Anuradha, would you like to say something? Or is this by accident? I'm not sure. I see a hand there on my screen. So Anuradha, if there is something you would like to highlight, please tell us. Okay, we will move forward then. That's absolutely fine. Now, we also know that there has been an explosion of research in recent years around AI, and I don't know if there's any other time in recent years where we had so many publications, so much interest. So many people are writing about generative AI. This one is a particular paper here that I've been also collaborating with, led by Professor Aras Boskurt with many colleagues from different parts of the world, where we looked at the positives and the negatives, sort of narratives we collected. And again, you see on the left-hand side some of the positives, highlighting just some specific ones on time saving, which we often reach out to generative AI. And if we think about education and learning and teaching, that can be quite useful as well. But it's also has created opportunities, I'm talking about the positives now, opportunities for assessment to radically rethink how we assess. But also it created new opportunities for creativity. I'm just highlighting a few there. Again, you will have full access to the paper, and I'm sure you will find many of the things we are saying there quite interesting and useful. On the negatives, because we do need to be aware of these, I'm highlighting the ethical consideration. There's a lot of talk and conversation and unease about the data and where that data comes from. And if the big corporations have the right to just harvest anything that is available on the web and use it and commercialize it. And that's where we come in as open educators, where we have open licenses and we release our work under specific license that gives pre-permission for our work to be used in specific way. Now, that doesn't exist yet. And open education, the open education movement, and many organizations globally push for something like this to be considered, so that the work and the origin of the work is recognized and fully acknowledged going forward. I'm just briefly here sharing two frameworks by UNESCO. Like I said, many individuals, organizations have come up with different frameworks on generative AI literacy, on how we can make step-by-step progress in integrating and considering, if you like, generative AI in our teaching. This is a particular framework from UNESCO, particularly focusing on what teachers can do. And if we look at it from left to right, apologies, it says acquire, deepen, and create. Looking at the specific aspects from 1 to 5 there. I'm not going to get into detail into this, but it reminded me of Bloom's taxonomy, I have to say. And Bloom's taxonomy is something we use widely in the UK, and I know in other countries. I don't know how it is, Shionika, where you are. I would be delighted to hear, for learning outcomes, and we talk about constructive alignment to the assessment, etc., etc. But it creates an illusion, I would say, that learning and teaching is linear, and that creating, which you see at the right-hand side here, is something that needs to be mastered. But if this is the case, I would like to know how children create, are playful, and make all kinds of things and discoveries without actually, according to Bloom, fully understanding and fully being aware of what they are creating. So there's something useful in these frameworks, and we can go to the next page where we see the equivalent for learning, very, very similar. But I think we need to be mindful that learning is very messy. It is not linear, and we can't put it in a box. Any framework has a very useful element, but we also need to be critical and creative in how we engage with these, and don't use them exclusively as they have been designed. We need to be mindful and adapt and appropriate them so that they are useful for our specific context. And I would be delighted to hear if you have found any of these frameworks useful, or other frameworks as well to integrate into your practice. Thank you. This is a very quick report. Again, we are just going to say a few things here. This is from Adobe, very fresh. I'm mindful this comes from a commercial provider, and we do need to be mindful of this, but they have found that, you know, engagement with generative AI among students is around 90%. This is huge. I mean, if we do something similar with educators, I suspect the percentages are much lower. So what I'm trying to say here that we are living in a time where our students are potentially more experimental, engaging more, are more adventurous, if you like, in exploring generative AI for their learning than some of the educators are, and we have a lot of catch up to do. But there are also opportunities for collaboration, and that's something that I feel strongly about, that we can learn from and with our students so that we are not left behind, and that we as educators, but also as students, are progressing and are learning and remain current and at the forefront of development. Because we don't like something, it doesn't mean that there is no value in it, but we do need to engage critically and ethically with using it. Now, on the screen on the right-hand side here, you have seen some percentages, and what it highlights, the bottom bit here, is really important. It actually shows that teachers, educators who are using more creative ways of teaching have a bigger impact on the not just the creative engagement, but the learning of their students. So being adventurous in our teaching, being more experimental and playful, including the use of generative AI, has a very positive, can have a very positive impact on how our students are learning, what they're learning, and how much they are learning as well. So we have a responsibility in that area. But there is that thing that came out of this report, and I've highlighted here, fast learning, on the right-hand side in yellow, as you see, with a question mark, because the report shows that students are using it to not to make shortcuts, but to get sort of quicker digest large amount of information. And there is still value, and there always is value in slow learning, would be my suggestion. And there is no point. We live in a very fast-paced world, but there are things that zoom in front of our eyes, and we lose track of it, and we think we need to catch up with everything. And that's why that can create very stressful situations. But we need to be selective. We need to be focused and meaningful of what that speedy learning actually means, and where it is appropriate and where it isn't. Because there is time, we need to make time for slow learning, for reflection, for conversation, for experimentation. So I think there's one responsibility we have here, because often as educators, we fill our modules, our programs with a lot of stuff known as content. I don't like that word at all. So we need to do less and different things as well. And that's something to consider, because the universe, if you like, is filled with stuff. And now with AI, there's even more that is generated at speed. What does this mean for human thought? What does this mean for creativity? What does it mean for collaboration? What does it mean for knowledge creation going forward in making a difference to the world? I think we can move. Thank you. So like I said at the beginning, there are many educators who have and students who have generously shared what they have been doing for the last 2.5 years. And these are just two collections with over 200 collectively ideas that we have crowdsourced from colleagues and students from over 21 countries around the world, who have generously shared how they have started experimenting with generative AI. And I would encourage you to have a look, all openly licensed, freely available for you to have a look at. And maybe we have even some colleagues here and students who have contributed to these collections as well. I'd be delighted to hear that as well. But these are two resources among many others that are out there available for you to have, for all of us to have a look at and learn from. Thank you. So one thing to be mindful is, because the internet has been flooded with generative AI tools, and we often sign up quite easily to 1, 2, 10 or more tools, and we have ended up with different login details for all of them. But sometimes they disappear, So I recently tried to refine one that I have found here, well, a while ago, and I used, and I thought that was really useful. It no longer exists. So I just wanted to highlight this very briefly, that there is a tendency that we get, and the same happens with social media. You know, we get some new tools, we are excited, we start using them, and then suddenly, poof, they're gone. So be mindful of this, and it's not about the tool, what the tool are enabling. So we need to be able to move quickly, but also be mindful of, do I really need that tool? What difference will it make? So this is not about more and, you know, signing up to all kinds of different things, being really selective and focused in what we are using. And that's what I'm trying to make the point here, is creativity isn't what we put in, but it's also what we leave out. And that's really important, because we as educators often feel under the pressure. We need to do more. We need to do things faster. Our students need to do things faster. But first of all, I think we need to consider carefully what we need to leave out before we put anything new in that is of value. And creativity in the end are things that we are introducing that are new, but there also needs to be some value to it. And that's really, really important. Here is a recent report from the UK, the quality this is from the government, and many governments and many organizations, like I said, have released a number of really insightful reports where they summarize some of the things we also as educators and learners have seen in the last few years. But the key points here are that generative AI creates really new opportunities for learning. And that is exciting. That's exciting for learners, and that should also be exciting for us as educators. It can speed up. I already talked about that time-saving element. It can speed up things that take us a bit longer, but there are issues, as we know, ethical issues, bias in the data. I can bring up a recent example where I said, in Copilot, we have an institutional license, so we have full access to Copilot. I said, from our conversations we have had in the last few months, can you tell me how you imagine me to be? And it came up with a brief narrative, and I said, can you visualize how I look like? And guess what? I was white and I was male. So this is a very specific example of how the data is biased. So we need to be very mindful of that when we critically engage with it, to and not just believe. One of my students just submitted their dissertation, MA students in digital education, and they did a really interesting study around generative AI in the corporate sector. And one of the key findings of that study was actually that while we access generative AI, we are not really trusting what we are getting. So we want human confirmation that this is correct. And I really like that as an output of that study, and it's very powerful, I think, as a message. But overall, this specific report showed that those engaging with generative AI, doing these baby steps, trying to experiment, trying different things, are genuinely more positive towards it. So staying away makes us negative. And it reminded me of something that my little boy, well, he's now 21, my youngest, when he was young and I presented him with new food, let's say tomatoes at some point, he said, I don't like it. What is it? So this is not good. We need to try and then to learn either to love it, but have a critical perspective, to have a viewpoint that is informed. Okay. So that's just something to highlight. And that goes very briefly back. It's just something that was published, I think yesterday even, or the day before. And the colleague Sheila McNeil from the UK put that on LinkedIn, and I thought that's very true. So there are many big issues around copyright, about the intellectual property of artists, of creators who are concerned, and we need to be mindful of this and see how that can be addressed. It's just harvesting anything that's available out there. Is this an option? I'm not so sure, but something needs to happen in that area. Thank you. So what we can do now is we can briefly have a look at 3 examples, like I said, how I have used generative AI as an educator, first of all. One on feedback poetry, problem-based learning scenarios, and storyboarding. And I'll explain very briefly what I did. So feedback poetry is the first one. This is on our MA in digital education. And we know in the UK, at least, there are some challenges. Students find feedback, often they don't understand it. They are not satisfied. They're relying on feedback that they get from their tutors. There are ways to automate the feedback, etc. So it creates a lot of difficulties for students. But there are also opportunities, and I think we need to rethink how we work with feedback. Dialogic feedback is one way of doing it, and actually generative AI creates a really useful opportunity in that area. But also self and peer-to-peer feedback are underused. So what I did, if we go to the next slide, I wanted to reward high achievers, especially on an assignment. So after I had provided feedback that I had written, what you see here on the screen is feedback that I had written without generative AI. And I had shared that already with the students. For the high achievers, I thought, how interesting would it be if I could turn that very quickly, and this is time saving, but doing something in a creative way, into a poem. And it was in January, February in 2023 when I tried that for the very first time, because that's when everybody started looking at ChatGPT. So we can move to the next slide. Yes, when we all experimented with generative AI, and I went and I gave that feedback without mentioning any names. So I stripped it from names, etc. And I said, could you help me turn this into a poem? And in seconds, literally in seconds, I had a poem. I then had a conversation. I was very impressed. So I shared that. I added that in addition to the feedback that I gave. And explained what I actually did. I was transparent. I didn't claim that this is my poem, but it's based on my words. And the students were very excited, but they also make the very interesting observation. And the observation that they made is, it's great because I did well in my assignment and it helped me to celebrate that a bit more. But what if you had a student who fails? So that was very interesting because it made me think about, this is not something you can do or apply across. So we need to be, like we said, mindful of when something is appropriate, like we do with everything else. But I have kept using feedback poetry, like I call it, and I have engaged students also in providing peer-to-peer feedback in that way when we did problem-based learning. And we can move to the next example. And in that example, it's again on the same course, MA in Digital Education at the University of Leeds in the School of Education, where I wanted to use problem-based learning instead of flipped learning. And what you see here on the screen is Jenny Moon. I don't know if you're familiar with her work. She has done a lot of work around reflection, a lot of work around the power of story in higher education. And we know that we are naturally all storytellers. So I went into, if we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So I wanted to break free from what we used as flipped learning, which was week by week a task where students had in advance to read some of the theories, publications, etc., and wanted to turn this into more of a problem-based learning experience over 2 weeks using story that were weaved into the problem-based learning scenarios. And it was around assessment and feedback and audio and video. So I constructed manually a storyline, if you like, with bullet points. And I went into ChatGPT at the time. Again, we can go to the next one, where I asked for ChatGPT to turn it into a story. And again, that happened very quickly. Now, here you see I provided some help to the students to familiarize themselves with problem-based learning, but also a fish model I had developed with Lars Uhlin, a colleague from Sweden, and we had used many years ago. So they had some background information, what we would be doing in advance that needed preparation. But if we go to the next slide, here you just see the whole process with which I shared again transparently with my students, how the scenarios that we used for problem-based learning were generated. One issue that I encountered was with ChatGPT is that it didn't just create the scenario. And again, it was very male orientated. The names of the educator and students that I used were all very Western and male. It just confirmed all the things, you know, we know and read about and the research shows. But it also created, the biggest challenge was that it also had possible solutions in the scenario. And I was quite angry with ChatGPT. And I said, I didn't ask you to produce any answers, you know, for this. This is about the students are doing it. So obviously I didn't articulate the prompt appropriately. And then I went in and edited it manually. But it did save me time. And it did help me then to create also audio versions of these scenarios, which we then successfully actually used also in combination with feedback poetry, where groups of students then worked together and gave feedback to each other. So I've combined the use of storytelling, of problem-based learning with the peer-to-peer feedback and feedback poetry, and that worked really well. Great. The third example from an educator perspective is storyboarding. And storyboarding is something we use as a design, it's part of design thinking. And I'm at the moment the academic lead for Discover and Explore. And we are creating a number of different prototypes. So storyboarding gives us that opportunity to present, you know, when you create a story, let's say a picture book, for example, that is pictures and words. Storyboard creates that sequence of events and helps you live that story, visualize that story as well. So it plays a vital role in design thinking, and it helped us in creating these prototypes. If you go to the next slide, we will then see the prototype. So we used prototypes for we used storyboarding, for developing the block prototype. So these are condensed learning experiences over 3 or 5 weeks. And we wanted for the SOUL modules that are currently under development, and we wanted to see how students would engage with these and get some feedback for them. So we went, if we move forward, this is the insights that we got. We used an openly licensed game called the ePizza game to get some insights. We used that insight from the student to design the storyboards. If we go to the next slide. These are just the modules, and you can have a look at that. If we move forward. And this is what we did. This is the storyline where we used generative AI, using the insights we got from the students to go back to the students to discuss with them the course prototypes around block that we had developed. Again, it did save time. It was also creative because it added value to the engagement that it generated with the students to be able to follow our train of thought and our rationale and get some valuable insights also from the students that then influenced and further shaped the design. So these the tiny images that we can't now even see on the screen are generated by Copilot, again, Microsoft Copilot, which we have from the institution, based on prompts that we gave that corresponded to our design intentions. Wonderful. We can move. Great. So I don't know, Shironika, if you want us to move on quickly to also present these 3 examples, please let me know. From a student perspective, is that okay? Yes? Okay, wonderful. So like I said, 3 examples from an educator side. I'm also a student at the moment, so I'm presenting you my own examples of how I have used as an educator and student generative AI over the last few months. So the first example focuses on how I've used it as a study buddy, and that's actually linked, if you like, to feedback and having feedback conversation. How I generated very quickly a presentation from an assignment that I have done, but also how I reflected visually using Copilot and what that means to capture my learning on a specific module. So if we start with the study buddy, and before we go there, this is a very interesting study here that has been published with over 149 co-authors. I don't know if you have read it. This is just fascinating. The amount of, the number of authors, and it's just amazing. But read it to really engage in depth with it. But what I have just taken out of that is figure 6 that talks about how, and this is all about how students are using it. We're talking about students now, and the things that I could clearly see is that there doesn't seem to be any creativity mentioned from the student side. It seems to be about simplification, to summarize things, to have conversations and develop understanding, but there is no creativity mentioned. And that's something that stood out for me, especially also in link to what we are discussing today, and how, the creativity and the creative engagement can actually make a big difference. But maybe that is something that will come next. So it will be interesting to see development. So this is just the course I'm doing. I'm on an executive leadership course that I'm doing at my own institution. And the examples that I'm going to share are from that course, how I have used it as a student. So study buddy, let's have a look at this. In the module that I've just finished, which is a finance module, and I'm not very good with numbers, I have to admit. So I did struggle. What you see here is the first part of the assignment, and it was about ratios. So I had to familiarize myself with what these ratios are, how I do these calculations, what these means. And obviously we had loads of readings online. And here's my assignment, voila. And I wanted to do something that would be meaningful for me and linked to my own institution. So I looked at our annual report, which is freely available on the website and anybody can see, to try and see if I can make sense of these ratios and calculate them. I had difficulties. I struggled because first of all, the literature I was reading, the stuff we did on the course, and I'm sure my tutors wouldn't mind saying that, were more linked to business, to the business world, and there's different terminology, etc. So I really struggled. So I quickly went to Copilot and I said, I need some help in understanding what are these ratios, and translate some of the terminology that we got in the literature I was reading into a higher education context, so I could make sense of that and be able to respond and complete the assessment that I had to do. We can move forward. Great. So I went to Copilot, and this is just something that I did even before. I said, well, I'll need help. I'm going to reflect. And it created a poem. I always seem to go back to poetry. I don't know. I like poetry, I guess. But on the right-hand side, because I had a headache from all these numbers, and I had a headache from all these equations. I said, I just need to go and get some fresh air, but we will have some conversation. That was just a warning for Copilot that I am going to be back. But I said, I'm going to get some fresh air. And I thought, I can ask it how, if Copilot was a human, where would you like to be to get some fresh air? And this is actually the image that it generated. I just find it fascinating, how it comes up with specific things and environments based on what I thought limited information that I gave. So I would be very interested to hear about the algorithms behind it. But again, I'm not sure how much of this I would understand, but I'm fascinated by the applications and the outputs. So what I did is, if we go to the next slide, very quickly, I went to Copilot and I had that conversation about ratios. I was going back to seek clarification. So after I further understood what I had to do as a student on this assignment, I then went back and said, is this correct? I have written this, I've calculated this, I did all the calculations manually. And it really helped me to make sense of ratios, but also translate it in the institutional context and help me with that assignment without relying on tutor input or feedback, because I did seek feedback, but I was told that it was too early in the course and that I needed to wait. Now, that's something we as educators need to be mindful of, because we do need to be flexible. We know that many of our students are really busy, and they work and they learn when it is suitable for them. So that I had made progress before my tutor expected it to make progress should not be seen as something negative or something that I shouldn't have done. I used the time when I had it to make progress with my assignment. So I was really pleased how it worked with Copilot. And I felt much more confident after the conversation I had with Copilot of how my understanding was actually developing. So something that I felt scared about as a student turned into something that was manageable and actually not that unpleasant, I have to say, which was a surprise to me. So it had really a positive impact on that work that I had to do and was scared of doing as a student. So let's move. So presentation. From that assignment, I then thought, okay, what if I needed to create a presentation? And we know we can do PowerPoints, and many of us as educators, I can't escape the fact that I'm also an educator, but also a student. We create presentations, and we love creating presentations. We love to visualize our thoughts, etc. But it takes us often a long time. And I thought, what if I took, the introduction of my assignment and I had to present my assignment to my peers, maybe in a study group, etc. So I went to Gamma. I don't know if you have used Gamma. I've used it as an educator as well, but also with my students, but also here as a student, to turn my words, not generating from nothing, my words into something that I could use to talk about my assignment. I was amazed again in seconds. And the beauty of this is not the final product. We can go in, we can be creative, we can edit, we can remove things, we can add things in seconds. And it takes away something that is important, which is making, but it engages us in the making process and learning through making in a very different way that I find really useful. And I have found that useful as a student. So if, for example, also now going back to my educator mode, if we ask students and study groups, etc., to present their outputs, if it is about the learning and not the beautification of the presentation, why not use a tool like this to make it Yes, easier, but also focus on what really matters. And what really would matter for me there would be to have that critical conversation about the learning and not saying, oh, this is a beautiful image here. Yeah. So just something to think about. Obviously, there will be courses, and if we think about design courses or art courses, etc., where the aesthetics and the visual outputs will have a different value, and that's something we need to be mindful of. The third and last example I would like to share with you is a visual reflection. As a student, again on that module, I gave a very quick brief prompt, which you see here on the screen on the left-hand side, about my confusion and all numbers, etc. And this is how I felt. And without mentioning people, I got people. So I had to be very specific. That's why I crossed it out on the screen. I wasn't happy with this. So I couldn't relate to this because it was also about a personal reflection. It was about me and how I felt on the course. So I thought, okay, let's say it's a teddy bear. So it came up with this teddy bear in this real weird landscape where everything was floating around. It really represented that messiness. I don't like the eyes, if you like, of the teddy bear, but I was happy. I could see myself in here, and I could see myself as part of that picture. Okay, so if we go to the next one, I then, at the end of the module, and we often ask our students to reflect, and we know how important that is for learners, but often as learners, we don't see the point. We think our educators, our tutors are asking us, okay, here, reflect a little bit more. And we don't see it. But actually, for me as a student here on this module that I struggled with, that you can see on the left-hand side, where I went to Copilot and found that help and light, and it managed to help me organize my thinking and believe that I could do it. It was instrumental. It was really, really useful, that way of putting my reflections in a very simple way together, that I could come back and see that journey, my beginning, the middle, and the end. And I have now successfully completed the module. I have no idea what mark I'll get, but I hope I will pass. But I feel much more confident in engaging with numbers, in looking at financial reports, in costing educational initiatives, etc. And these are skills that we all also need as educators. So having that visual here that we all see, despite the fact that there are 3 different teddies, I really don't mind. Like I said, it's not about the aesthetics, but it's more about seeing myself in this case here as a learner, and these milestones, if you like, on my journey. So this is the last example that I shared as a student. If we just move forward to our next one. Yes, so there are many things, just very brief, there are many things we can do. There are many things we can leave out when we design a curriculum. There are also many things as a learner potential we could stop doing. I'm not going to get into any of these things, but less is definitely more. And before we talk about and consider to adding new stuff to our modules, to our learning and teaching experiences and approaches we are using, it's first to think, what can I leave out? Where is the need to inject some creativity, some playfulness to make learning and teaching, I have to say, and teaching more exciting, more stimulating, more fun, without leaving out, obviously, also that frustration that we often have as learners, sometimes also as educators, because when we explain things, we are not always doing it in a way that makes it accessible to our students. So we need to be mindful of all of these factors. But I think being open to experimentation is really, really key. So these are just some things to look at, perhaps at the end, and revisit if you like, to get back to. Now, very briefly here, and we are at the end, we are very close to the end. I talked a little bit about play, and experimentation. For me, play is a form of experimentation, and it's really vital in learning. This is how children learn. This is how we learn as teenagers, if you like, but also in adulthood. In higher education, it has often been seen, at least in the past, things are changing. Things are changing as something that's inappropriate, but actually it's of real value because play helps us to be free. Play helps us to step out of feeling judged or judging others, and play enables us to dream up things that we think are impossible. Yeah. So I called this the playground model, which I developed in 2015, and it's also in the book. I don't know if Alison James is here with us. With my dear colleague Alison James, The Power of Play in Higher Education, which we published in 2019, and we are going to work on the second edition very soon. The playground model. Why did I come up with this playground thing? Because it reminded me of what's happening in the playground. So let's say I'm a parent and I have a 6 months little baby. Where am I with that baby in the playground? I will be supervising that baby. You know, I'll put it on a swing and I'll be next to it. I will be attached to it. In the same way, this is how we can introduce more playful, more experimental ways with our students potentially. We are nearby. We develop trust. We develop that confidence. But when that 6 months old becomes when the 6 months old is 6 year old, where are we in relation to the playground and that child? We will be a bit further away. We may be sitting on the bench. We are still on the playground. We are helping that 6 year old to develop that playful confidence. In the same way, we can do that with our students. We are moving a bit away, allowing more freedom and autonomy to do things, to try things, to fall down from that, I don't know, construct in the playground, the ladder, etc. Things will happen, accidents will happen, but we are nearby. We are nearby to help and support. While when the 6 year old becomes 16 year old, as a mom, I'm no longer on the playground. And in the same way, our students can then really grow and flourish and find their own way of doing things, of being playful, of having that self-determination and true autonomy to actually learn. So I see these 3 steps as fundamental also in how we could introduce generative AI, not just for ourselves as educators, but also with our students and the role we play. So think about the playground model and how that may be useful actually going forward. Okay, here just some resources again to access. I talked about the 2 frameworks by UNESCO. You see these from the left. Then there's a very interesting open publication. These are all open publications on creative applications of artificial intelligence in education. You can access that. And the paper I mentioned, led by Aras Bozkurt and many colleagues for further exploration. There's so much out there. One could say there's maybe too much out there, and it's really difficult, but I would love to hear what you have found useful in your practice. This is just to highlight that, and I use that same visual. Shironika may remember in a recent other session we did, and she noticed, I think she got it, why I used it. Isn't it, Shironika? Would you like to say? This is openly available. It's an open image from Amsterdam, the Rijksmuseum. But you said something really important there, and I would let you say it. What did you say about the cactus?
Well, I think that that shows the both, well, even though it seems like, negative thing, but the positive, I think that's something like that. I said you used it in the previous panel discussion, the same picture. So
Yes.
it is something like which has both positive and negative aspects, but for us to use it use it positively. I don't know,
Yes,
something
exactly.
like that. That was the idea, I believe. I can't
Yes,
remember exact thinking.
yes, and that's with everything, isn't it? Everything that can be used for good can also be used for bad, but we need to be mindful of the good in things and be critical and creative and how we can appropriate it, in our case, for our students, for our learners, for our own, teaching practice and how we support students. Thank you so much. I think I've reached the end.
Yeah.
I hope it was useful for everybody who is here today. I'm looking
Yes.
forward to any short conversation, I guess,
Yes.
if we have time.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you very much, Chrissy. I think within this short period, you covered quite a lot of things. And unfortunately, the chat has been not enabled. Now
Oh,
only I realized that. I was wondering why there are no comments.
okay.
So I'm sorry, participants. Now it's enabled. We can spend about like 5 to 6 minutes
Yes.
to answer some any quick questions. You can. Yeah, I think there are some comments coming now. You can see them in the chat
Thank
box.
you. Yes, I see one. Hi, Salha. I didn't know you were here. Lovely to see you. And switch on your camera if you like, and we can have a conversation. But you're asking any recommended AI tools in general. Like I said near the beginning, the issue is that there are so many different tools, and we often feel very excited about, oh, there's a next shiny tool and I can try it, etc. But I think try with one that does one thing, and see how you can apply it to different situations. I these days primarily use, we have some bonus slides which, Veronica, you can share, where there are a number of different tools also mentioned. But see what you want to do. I find Copilot really easy to
Copilot.
use,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
helps me. We have an institutional access, which is good. I don't know if other institutions have. I know that many use ChatGPT. Copilot has that nice thing that it can do the visuals in the
Sure.
same
Mm-hmm.
package, so it
Mm-hmm.
works really well. But it depends what you want to do. If we go, should we go? Or we can share the slides, Veronica, so that colleagues can access. There are other really interesting tools where you can work with text and have conversations with academic papers. That's really interesting as well, and how to turn those into podcasts, which again I think is a really creative use. And I'm using that actually on a book, on an open book I'm working on at the moment, where I have inserted the whole book, and it comes out the AI with interview conversation that I didn't do. Two generative AI sort of entities have done it, but it's based on the book, on the things that I have written. So there are many creative ways to engage our students.
I will share the slides as well
Yes,
as links
thank
for
you.
your 2 books with all the registered participants. And there's another small query, whether we can use free versions to manage, without purchasing tools. I think to some
Yes.
extent you could, right?
Yes, thank you. Shashikala, thank you for the questions. I have to tell you, I have not purchased any tool. I'm only using the free versions, and I would not want any of my students to need to purchase specific tools. This creates issues, equity issues as well. And I think that's why our institution has provided to all members of staff and all students Copilot as a basis to use AI, so it is equitable. Because if we start expecting our students to have to buy specific tools, I think this creates and increases inequality in education, which is not something that I feel comfortable about.
Maybe
For me, it's about inclusion, simple things. This is not about the shiny tools. This is really being resourceful, and resourceful is something really important when we talk about creativity, being resourceful with the resources we have. And there is actually something to be mindful of that this is not about shiny tools. This is about really utilizing what I have what I have access to, and what I can do with it.
Your creative
I hope
thinking,
that
right?
helps. Yes,
Your creative
yes,
thinking with whatever available facilities, available tools. Yeah. Now
yes.
I have enabled, I mean, if you like to voice, I mean, you can talk if anybody would like to verbally, rather than typing on chat, if you would like to ask, that's also enabled now.
Professor Shironika, I'm Menaka here.
Yes, Menaka, good.
For any
Is
reason,
someone who is working on AI at our university, Open Institute of Sri Lanka.
Amazing. Where are you? I can't see you. If you stop spotlighting me so I can see everybody.
You can put on the video also if you like.
Yeah.
Yes, would
But
be lovely to see you.
Just I have to put the live just a moment.
Veronica, can you stop spotlighting me maybe so that I can see colleagues?
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor, for the nice presentation. I would like to know to what extent that you allow to use the students for these GenAI tools in their assignments and submissions.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. At the university, and this is something that I didn't mention yet, but you gave me that opportunity, we have a traffic light system linked to assessment. So module leaders define how AI, if and how AI can be used. So there is red that says, don't use it. There is orange or yellow that is, you can use it if it supports your learning. And usually the module leader defines what that means. And third is you have to use it, green, you must use it. Now, I think in the future, we shouldn't really have a red because this is like saying, don't use a pen or don't use a book or don't use the internet for your learning. I think this is where we are leading. But we can also not demand you must use AI unless the subject requires it, I would say. So if it is in computing or if the course is about generative AI in, I don't know, in medicine or something, the students will have to use it. We can't really say you don't use it or use it if you want to. So there will be situations where we are in orange or yellow. So in whatever way it supports your learning. But if it is specifically linked to AI, the course, you must use it. I think we will, that's where we are leading towards, I suspect. And I would be very interested in what everybody else thinks.
Yeah, thank you very much for that answer. And I have gone through some of the websites of the universities where they specify to what extent that they can use and all these things. So,
wonderful.
I mean, when it comes to a country like Sri Lanka, there's a lot of disparity where the people can support and get these tools. The section is so wide. So that's why I really wanted to clarify. And thank you very much for reminding about these other things, because I am also a past alumni of University of Leeds.
My question is, I'm wondering about the copyright of photos that generated by AI.
Yes. Okay. So, like I said, I feel uncomfortable as an open educator that these corporations are harvesting, intellectual property, including visuals, including artwork, including photographs, etc., from anybody without permission. That's my big problem. When I use any GenAI tool to generate an image, I don't claim copyright. I don't claim ownership of that work. I always say generated by whatever that tool is, based on my prompt. So there is no copyright for me attached to any of the work that is generated by AI, if it is an image or if it's text or if it's a different visualization, a figure or something else. There are a lot of conversation, and I haven't read yet, but I think Creative Commons published something yesterday or very recently around the open licenses, generative AI, and something. And I need to follow that up urgently to see what the latest position is of Creative Commons. But there is a lot of gray and a lot of unease and issues there from those in the creative industries, I think, especially, but also writers who are very concerned that their work will be swallowed by all these engines to make money. I have to say, as an open educator, I wouldn't have a problem if my work, like I release my work under an open license, if I could give permission for it, if there was an open license, for it also to be going into, you know, any of these generative AI tools and used under the license agreement. You know, if I, as a creator, can have some control of how my work is used, like for in Creative Commons licenses, we have some that are for commercial use and other ones that don't enable, don't give the opportunity for anybody to use commercially. So if I can predefine, like I do with the open license, that anybody can use, yeah, you can make money out of it, I don't mind. Or no, you can't, but you need to release, you know, what is generated under a similar license. I would be very happy with that. I don't know. I would be interested in Veronika's position as well. But I think there are many gray areas, many things that need to be worked out, and that can only happen through open and honest conversation and collaboration. Veronika?
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think that's a separate discussion.
Yes. Big discussion.
That's a very big discussion. I think a lot of discussions are going on in the community as well, open community. And next week we are having the Open Education Week. I'm sure there are a lot of
yes,
events happening, discussions going on. So
next week, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we have, I think we have come to the end of the session now. So I think we had a very, very productive session today. I think within that 1 hour, or it took more than 1 hour, I believe you covered quite a lot of things, like starting with frameworks and reports and research done. So a lot of things. And as the most important thing is those examples you showed from a student's perspective and from an educator's perspective. Those are very few examples, but I'm sure if we refer to the crowdsourced collection, there will be a lot more examples. So I will definitely share that with all participants. So majority are educators, teachers at higher education at our university and other universities as well. And some of our student teachers, school teachers as well. So I think it's been a useful session for everybody to think about how creative we can be, whatever the tool is. As you said, some tools are disappearing, right? So we don't know. We can't depend only on the tool, but we have to depend on ourselves, our critical thinking, our creativity, our imagination, whatever the tool. I mean, every day new tools are being developed, other tools are disappearing. So I think that's a very good point you mentioned about. So the whole focus on today's session was on creativity, creative integration of generative artificial intelligence. So I think you managed to give a very good message on how to be creative in integrating generative AI. So let me take this up. And I think your playground model, that's very interesting. I think that's a good thing for all of us to study. I mean, the relevance of it using this playground model. So we'll study, I mean, we will study that as well and see how we can adopt these frameworks, models into our teaching learning processes as well. Right. Okay. So let me take this opportunity to thank you, Chrissy, Professor Chrissy Neransi from University of Leeds at United Kingdom for accepting our invitation to conduct this webinar today. And on behalf of the Center for Educational Technology and Media, CETME, and the Faculty of Education of the Open University of Sri Lanka, I would like to thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing your experiences, examples, and resources with us. Okay, and also the participants, I thank you all for your active participation, and hope we will be meeting again. This is a series of webinars, so we'll be meeting again next month with another webinar on a different aspect on integrating generative AI in education. All right, then, everybody, thank you so much once again, and we can end the session now. Prissy,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone. We are going to end the session now.